CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Hello, and glad you can join us as Canadians go to the polls in one of the most consequential elections in decades. Together, we will decide who will lead this country at this critical time. Atop the Peace Tower on Parliament Hill, the red and white maple leaf flag has been lowered to half-mast as the tragedy in Vancouver looms large in our hearts and our minds. 11 people murdered, mowed down during a festival by a man in an SUV. More than a dozen are still in hospital, and it is in Vancouver where we start our coverage with CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson on the grief and pain, but also the investigation and the suspect. Andrew.
Sandy, the size of this memorial near the scene of the attack serves as a visual representation of a city's grief as we learn more about the man accused of murder. Meters from the spot, lives were forever changed or lost. Hundreds of people have dropped off flowers and messages of support after a vigil where the Filipino community tried to put words to unspeakable violence.
We've lost lives that in such a meaningless tragedy.
We're all grieving for all the Filipinos.
Saturday night, a celebration of Filipino culture was ripped apart by a man in a speeding SUV who plowed through a crowd, killing multiple people and sending more than 30 to hospital.
Everything was in chaos. It's like a war zone, and it's like, you know, I don't know, zombie apocalypse, bodies everywhere.
30-year-old Kaiji Adam Lowe has been charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder. He was grabbed by witnesses before being arrested and appeared to apologize.
Smile, you I'm sorry.
Vancouver police searched this home believed to be Lowe's residence last night. Officers have had multiple interactions with Lowe involving his mental health. He also lost his brother to murder last year. Alexander Lowe was found dead inside a Vancouver home in January 2024. He'd been stabbed. As we learn more about the accused killer, police and the city are facing new scrutiny over security measures at public festivals.
We could try to secure the city as much as we can, but the underlying root cause is mental health issues. And if we do not get people with significant mental health challenges the help they need, incidents like this, I should say, will continue to happen.
Adam Lowe remains in police custody. He won't appear again in court for another month as this community continues to grieve one of its darkest days. Sandy.
CTV's Andrew Johnson. Now, we're also learning a bit more about some of those who were killed in the horrific rampage. CTV's Shannon Patterson met up with a family member who shared his grief.
The Lee family lived just blocks from the Lapu Lapu Festival. So on Saturday, Richard Lee, his wife Lynn Wong, and their 5-year-old daughter Katie walked over. 16-year-old Andy, Lee's son from his first marriage, decided not to go.
Andy was supposed to join them. At the last moment, he decided that he wanted to stay home to finish some homework. And the last thing that Andy received was a text from his dad at like 8:06 saying that, you know, don't come anymore because it's over. We're going to head home. And after that, it was radio silence.
When extended family learned an SUV had barreled through the crowd at the festival,
that's when panic kind of struck in.
Hours later, they were told Richard, Lynn, and Katie had all been killed, leaving Andy without his father, stepmother, and little sister.
He's still trying to absorb the situation, and I don't think he has fully comprehend what have happened.
The loss of 5-year-old Katie has hit the family especially hard.
She's just a very lively, cheerful person. There are times when she would just go to my parents' place and it'd be the life of the party. Everyone just, she's so adorable. We're gonna miss her.
Tone Lee has started a GoFundMe to cover funeral costs and to help extended family care for and raise Andy. And he wants to thank first responders and doctors and nurses who tried to save the victims.
We're just one of many families that have been affected by this, and our heart goes out to all of them. The only thing that I can say is that you just have to cherish your loved ones because life is short and you never know what can happen.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Vancouver.
The loss of life on the minds of Canadians as we also focus on the 45th general election with millions casting their ballots today. It is a tight race, according to the latest one-day Nanos poll for CTV News and the Globe and Mail, with just 3 percentage points separating the Liberals from the Conservatives. Mark Carney remains the preferred Prime Minister with a 20-point advantage over Pierre Poilievre. Okay, so we would like to touch base with our reporters covering the leaders, and starting with CTV's senior political correspondent Mike Licatour at Liberal headquarters in Ottawa. Okay, Mike, how confident do the Liberals sound today?
All right. Well, Sandy, I'd say they're cautiously optimistic. I've spoke with a number of Liberals who are either working on campaigns or campaigning for their own seats. Many of them believe that Mark Carney has done the job in the last 5 weeks to make the case to Canadians that he is the best person to face off against Donald Trump and negotiate any kind of new trade war against the United States. Now, that has been the central campaign, the central theme to the campaign for Mark Carney. He has been going around trying to say that he is the adult in the room, and to do that, he had a blitz yesterday, visiting 4 provinces in just 24 hours. His last event, Sandy, ended just before midnight Pacific time, and then he headed right here back to Ottawa.
Okay, Mike, thanks so much. Now, CTV's Abigail Beeman is also in Ottawa, but at Conservative headquarters. So, Abigail, just a few months ago, the Conservatives were riding a tidal wave of support. Things have changed dramatically for the party. What is the mood among those that you've spoken to today?
Sandy, I think fair to say heavy with anticipation. If you ask official party spokespeople, they are quick to say the mood is optimistic, that Canadians are ready for change. But I've spoken with Conservatives right across the country and have heard a few different takes, anything from predicting a Conservative minority to a toss-up between a Liberal minority and Liberal majority. So I think the takeaway there is people are expecting a tight race. Also notable, I attended Pierre Poilievre's last rally in his riding last night in the riding of Carleton, and we heard a new phrase from him. He said, "No matter what happens tomorrow, I will fight for you." And it was no matter what happens. That was the first time we heard that from Pierre Poilievre in a stump speech. Sandy?
Okay, Abigail. Now, according to the polls, it will come down to a two-way race between the Liberals and the Conservatives, with both the NDP and the Bloc appearing to languish. CTV's Judy Trinh is at NDP headquarters in Vancouver. And Judy, talk to us about what's at stake for the NDP and Jagmeet Singh.
Sandy, the party and its leader, they're both fighting for political survival, not just relevance in Canada and specifically here in British Columbia. Of the 24 seats that the NDP owned before the dissolution of Parliament, 12 are in British Columbia. And Jagmeet Singh is at risk of losing his own seat in Burnaby Central. It is a new riding that was created, and it draws in voters that have primarily voted Liberal in the past. So he is in tough. And this has also been very difficult because of the tragedy that happened at the Filipino Festival, as the NDP leader and his candidates are trying to juggle that with campaigning. Sandy.
Okay, CTV's Judy Trinh. Now, Quebecers have been focused on the economy, especially concerned about the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs. CTV's Jeremy Sharon is in Montreal covering the Bloc Québécois. And Jeremy, how has all of that affected the race in the province?
Yeah, well, Sandy, the second part of that, Donald Trump's tariffs has played a big role here. Quebec, or Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet has struggled, especially early on in this campaign, as the leader of a Quebec nationalist party at a time when the ballot box question is Donald Trump and the threat he poses. And so his campaign struggled early on, but seemed to have rebounded a little bit and experienced a resurgence, especially post-debate, where he has shifted his messaging. He has been saying for some time now he believes the Liberals will form government, and has been pitching Quebec voters on the fact that they need to vote Quebec MPs or Bloc MPs to Ottawa if they want to ensure that Quebec's priorities are maintained. And so the big question is, how many seats does the Bloc lose tonight? How many do the Liberals win? And the answer to that question could have a significant impact on the election result tonight, Sandy.
Jeremy in Montreal. Okay, one party left. This election campaign has been difficult for the Green Party, excluded from the leaders' debate and low in the polls. CTV's Rob Buffin is at Green Party headquarters in Victoria. And Rob, the Greens have 2 ridings in the province, so how hopeful are they today? Or rather, two ridings, one in Ontario.
Sandy, the mood here, I would say, is
myself. Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
That's right. Well, the mood here in BC at Elizabeth May's headquarters is one of cautious optimism, and I expect it's the same mood for Mike Morris in Ontario. Both candidates know they are in for a political fight for their lives. There is reason for optimism because they're both very popular in their ridings, but that optimism is tempered by concerns that progressive voters that traditionally vote Green may this time around park their votes with a Liberal or a Conservative, bleeding support away from the Greens, making it very difficult for them to be re-elected, I should say. So we'll wait and see over the next few hours whether or not the Greens can cling to those two seats and whether or not Elizabeth May, here Canada's first ever Green Party MP and the party's co-leader, can be re-elected. Sandy.
All right, Rob Buffin, thank you. A big thank you to all our reporters at headquarters with the various party leaders. Now, the specter of Donald Trump has been all over this campaign, and today he inserted himself back into Canada's voting with news as he once again ramped up the 51st state rhetoric. The president wrote on Truth Social in part that Canadians should elect the man who has the wisdom to cut taxes in half and increase military power if Canada becomes the 51st state, appearing to be alluding to himself. So let's bring in CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapellas. And Vashi, as I said before, the long shadow of Donald Trump has been hanging over this election campaign. But let's move away from that to what we will be watching for as the night unfolds tonight. Specifically, what will you be watching for?
Well, first and foremost, Sandy, no surprise, I'm watching to see who wins. I know the polls are all pointing in a specific direction to a degree, but they've tightened. I know that you've been reporting throughout the past few days over that period. And so I just feel less certain than ever. I know what's going to happen, so I think it's going to be a nail-biter of an evening. There's a couple of other things that I'm watching for. Turnout. Does that record advance poll turnout and the level of engagement that certainly anecdotally I've seen, does it translate on election day? Are we going to see, 70+% turnout? And then, of course, the coalescing of support around the Liberals and the Conservatives. What does it mean for the NDP? Paying attention to that as well, Sandy.
Okay, Vashi, thank you. Now, Vashi, along with Chief News Anchor Omar Sajidina, will lead CTV News election coverage beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern right across the country. Now, local CTV News teams have been working hard to cover this historic election campaign, and we'd like to check in with some of them. Starting in Atlantic Canada, where Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI account for 32 seats in the 343-seat House and could offer an early indication of where things are headed. Todd Battis is the chief news anchor at CTV Atlantic. And Todd, what's top of mind as the results trickle in?
Sandy, Atlantic Canadians love their politics, and this election certainly seems to confirm just that. The region saw the biggest spike in voting at advanced polls really in the country, up an average of 35% in the Maritimes. Now, not exactly sure who that benefits, and the key issues in this part of the country really aren't all that different from elsewhere. You get the U.S. tariffs, the cost of living, and housing. It's interesting, in the fall, the Conservatives were up 20+ points in public support. Atlantic Liberal MPs, you'll recall, led the push for Justin Trudeau to resign after Donald Trump's threats and Mark Carney's election as Liberal leader. Those numbers flipped as the Liberals then went up 20 points. It's narrowed. Some Liberal incumbents stepped down before that swing. One former high-profile minister, Sean Fraser, he changed his mind and decided to run again. He'll be doing that in Central Nova. Now, that's a riding with a long Conservative history, the riding of Elmer and Peter MacKay, and they were at a rally for Pierre Poilievre the other night. That's one we'll certainly be watching closely, among others. No doubt it will be an interesting night, as we always start here first in Atlantic Canada, Sandy.
It sure will, as always. Okay, Todd, thanks so much. Now, next we hit the first vote-rich province. Quebec has a total of 78 ridings up for grabs, and what happens here tonight could well be historic. So let's hear from Mustimi Takahashi, chief news anchor at CTV Montreal.
Sandy, the story of Quebec tonight is going to be told in the regions. Montreal, Quebec City, they're largely accounted for. But outside the city centres, Quebecers will be deciding whether to vote with their hearts or their heads. Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet did run a very good campaign, but how worried are they about Donald Trump? And the answer to that question could well determine how many seats the Liberals will get in Quebec. Tonight, we'll be keeping an eye on ridings that could flip from Bloc to Liberal. Among them, Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavik, EU, that's in northern Quebec, where the Liberal candidate is the first female Quebec Cree Grand Chief. La Prairie, Adagagan, south of Montreal, the Liberal candidate there is a well-known coroner. He led an inquiry into the COVID deaths. And Gaspésie, des Îles de la Madeleine, Listagouche, that riding is in an earlier time zone from the rest of Quebec, so the returns from there will be the first ones we'll be seeing. Should be an interesting night. Sandy?
That is for sure. Thanks so much, Mitsumi. Now, next up, a crucial battleground, the Greater Toronto Area, with a population of 7 million people and 55 seats in the 416 and 905 area codes. CTV News Toronto co-anchor Michelle Dubé now with what's at stake here.
Sandy, very rarely does a party form government without dominating in the GTA. The Greater Toronto Area is voter-rich. The Liberals have ruled this region since they first came to power in 2015, the Conservatives before that. But here's the thing. It's home to a number of swing ridings that could go either way. Plus, there are newly created ridings with uncertain outcomes or ridings with an open seat, like in Ajax, where Mark Holland, for example, decided not to seek re-election. So it's up for grabs. Aurora Oak Ridge's Richmond Hill could be a solid swing seat for the Conservatives. The Liberals won by a slim margin last election, 3%. We've also got our eye on Toronto St. Paul's. You'll remember the 30-year Liberal stronghold that flipped to Conservative in a by-election last year, signaling the beginning of the end of the Trudeau era. So now there's a rematch, and keep in mind, MP Don Stewart won by just 600 votes there. So what it boils down to, if the Conservatives want to close the gap and form government, they will have to resonate with suburban 905 voters in particular who care about affordability, housing, taxes. They're worried about Donald Trump. The path to the Prime Minister's office runs through this part of the country. The polls indicating this area is a pivotal piece of the puzzle. Sandy.
That is for sure. All right, Michelle. Now, we're going to swing past the prairies just for now. On the west coast is Battleground BC with a total of 43 seats. Mi Jung Lee in Vancouver anchors the CTV News at 6 and has a preview of what to watch for.
Sandy, BC is the most competitive province in the country with plenty of 2- and 3-way races. Now, when the election was called, the Liberals had 14 seats, the Conservatives 14, NDP 12, and the Greens 1. But the map could look a lot less orange this time around, especially on Vancouver Island. Both the Conservatives and the Liberals have been targeting island ridings in the final week of campaigning. Mark Carney is hoping to flip the Victoria riding. Pierre Poilievre's best chance is Mid and North Island. The New Democrats' message has been, if you want to stop Conservatives, vote NDP. But polls show Jagmeet Singh is fighting to hang on to his own riding of Burnaby Central. Of all the leaders, Singh has spent the most time in BC. And strategic voting, though, in several ridings is taking away their support and handing it to the Liberals, especially in vote-rich Metro Vancouver. We will be watching several tight races that are too close to call. Battleground BC could have Canadians across the country staying up late to see who wins key ridings out west. Sandy?
And that is what we are anticipating. Mi Jung Lee, thank you so much. Now, as promised, later in this newscast, we'll take a closer look at the prairies and the issues relevant to that region. CTV National News returns in a moment as we leave you with a shot of Parliament Hill. The sexual assault trial of former World Junior hockey players began in London, Ontario today. A jury for the first time has heard detailed allegations against a group of 5 players. The first witness took the stand to confirm a timeline of events, and surveillance video was shown. The case relates to an alleged assault that took place at a London hotel in 2018. Now, Russia has announced a short truce in Ukraine next month. The Kremlin says it will pause the fighting for 3 days, starting May the 8th, to mark the country's victory over Nazi Germany in the Second World War. Ukraine's foreign minister dismissed Vladimir Putin's move, saying if Russia wants peace, it should stop the fighting And the elaborate and secret ritual to elect the next leader of the Roman Catholic Church is set to begin on May the 7th. 135 cardinals under the age of 80 will meet in the Sistine Chapel and vote on a successor to Pope Francis. And we'll be right back. Well, we've touched on all the regions so far with the exception of the 3 prairie provinces where the Conservatives remain far ahead of their rivals with support at 55%. Tonight we're going to dip into a key centre in Manitoba where the trade war is top of mind. CTV's Alex Karpa takes us to Manitoba's second largest city to hear what's on the minds of voters.
Known as the Wheat City, Brandon is Manitoba's second largest city, deeply rooted in agriculture. Jake Eyre is a seed farmer just south of Brandon. The discussions of tariffs and the ongoing trade war between Canada and the United States has kept Eyre on edge.
Probably the biggest thing we've noticed too has been marketing of crops. So on the grain producer side, you know, there's been a lack of movement of the grain going to, say, our end buyer, usually because it was destined to the States.
Just up the road sits Howe Park Farms, owned and operated by Ian Grossart. He says he and his family are not quite panicking with the uncertainty, but says it's concerning.
Markets like stability, and with unknowns like that, then that creates problems as far as, being able to contract for fall delivery of crops.
Although the trade war and uncertainty with tariffs is a hot topic in this region, there are other issues that plague people here in the Brandon area. One pressing matter Brandon Mayor Jeff Fawcett is focused on is improving safety in the city's downtown.
We do think that we do need to have bail reform. We have a lot of repeat offenders in our in the city, and we just need that system to be done better.
We spoke to people attending the Brandon Souris candidates debate to get a sense of their election priorities.
Yeah, safety. What's more important than safety? I can't think of anything.
I would like to see us keep the dental plan and pharmacare. I would like to see New Democrats back in to Parliament.
I think we have an issue with homelessness and drug addiction, and I'd like to see additional housing for homeless people.
Others I spoke to said they want smaller cities and towns like Brandon not to be forgotten about after election night. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Brandon, Manitoba.
So now it's up to you. Canadians do appear to be fully engaged like never before. All eyes will be on the outcome of today's election and how we move forward in these very challenging times. And as we say goodbye for now, we keep the families and victims of Saturday's tragedy in Vancouver in our thoughts. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. See you later with the election coverage.